Hare Krishna. So we will resume our discussion on the third chapter of the Bhagavad-gita. So last time we finished until the 7th verse. So now we'll resume with verse 8. Niyatam kuru karma tvam karma jayo hai karmana shariraya trapicate na prasedayeta karmana. Perform your prescribed duty, for doing so is better than not working. One cannot even maintain one's physical body without work. So in 3.6, Krishna had indicated to Arjun that for a conditioned person, inactivity is not an option, right? And based on that, he had contrasted an attached renunciate. Attached renunciate is one who externally gives up the action, renounces action, but is internally attached. Right? The senses are still seeking the sense objects. So he had contrasted an attached renunciate to a detached worker. So detached worker is one who performs the prescribed duties, but with detachment or aspiring to be detached. Right? In this verse, he gives the obvious conclusion that between an attached renunciate and a detached worker, Krishna says, you need to be a detached worker, that you perform your prescribed duty. That is better than being a falgu vairagya. That's being a false renunciate. And Krishna gives another reason that you cannot even maintain your body without work. Right? So there are two kinds of karma. One is basically called sustenance karma, which you need to perform just to stay alive. Eating food, drinking water, evacuating, sleeping. This is sustenance karma. And the second is nitya karma, which is basic obligatory activities offered in the scriptures, like performing sandhya vandanam, performing the basic oblations. So the injunction is that while one is still not purified, then one needs to at least engage in these activities, right? And this is also alluding to Arjun's earlier declaration, saying that it is better for me to live by begging, right? And Krishna is saying that's not your prescribed duty. You're a Kshatriya and you're still not fully purified. So the best thing for you to do is perform your prescribed duty while attempting to become detached from it. And Prabhupada says that Arjun was a householder and a military general. Therefore, it was better for him to remain as such and perform his religious duties as prescribed for the household Kshatriyas. Such activities gradually cleanse the heart of a mundane man and free him from material contamination. Okay, let's move on to the next verse. Verse 9. Yagyathat karmano nyatra lokayam karma bandhana tadartham karma konteya mukta sangha samachara. Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed. Otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way you will always remain free from bondage. So this is an important verse because it introduces the notion of Devi Varnashram. So far Krishna was recommending that you perform your prescribed duty, right, while aspiring to be detached. Now the nature of karma is that it binds you. So even if you perform your prescribed duty, the result, which is going to be in the mode of goodness, piety, But piety still binds you, right? And in Mahabharata, it is said, karmana badhyate jantu, that everybody is bound by karma. So Krishna uh, again introduces the notion of bhakti. Right? We know that he introduced it briefly in the second chapter. Here actually just one verse. He speaks about bhakti, and this is what is known as glimpses, jhalak. Before he will speak full on about bhakti, he is giving glimpses of the glories of bhakti. Right? He is saying to Arjun, yes, even if you perform your prescribed duties, it will be resulting into some kind of bondage. But there is a solution to that. What is it? It is you perform your prescribed duties for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Right? So it says Yagyarthat Karmano Nyatra. So in Yagyarthat, Yagya stands for Lord Vishnu. Prabhupada says Yagya means Lord Vishnu or sacrificial performances. So there are two meanings, and they're essentially synonyms, because ultimately the sacrificial performances are meant for the satisfaction of Vishnu. So whether you consider them as Yagya sacrificial performances or Yagya Vishnu, they are the same. So what do the Vedas say? Yagyavaya Vishnu. That the Yagyas are Vishnu, for the satisfaction of Vishnu. The same result. So this key verse introduces the notion of Devi Varnashram, wherein one performs one's prescribed duties, which is Varnashram, but for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu, which is what makes it Devi. And the result of Devi Varnashram is that it nourishes and grows one's bhakti. So there is also Karma Varnashram, where one performs one's duty for the pious benefits. So this is what is the general understanding of Varnashram, and that results in piety. So elevated birth or birth in higher planets, that is Karma Varnashram. Then there is Gyan Varnashram, where one performs their activities with the knowledge of the soul, the self. And this results in Mukti, liberation. And then finally there is Devi Varnashram. Right? So the Varnashram in itself is a matrix that allows a person to determine what my duty is. Right? Whether I'm a Brahman Grahastha, or I'm a Vaishya Brahmachari. So depending on which Varna and Ashram is, one can determine what one's duty is. That is Varnashram. Now, what is the conception in which one's duty is executed? That determines the destination. So Karma Varnashram is Bhukti, Gyan Varnashram is Mukti, and Devi Varnashram is Bhakti. So Krishna over here introduces Devi Varnashram, which will result in Bhakti. Right? In Srimad Bhagavatam 11th canto, Krishna speaks to Uddhav, saying that when one is situated in one's prescribed duties, then in this very life he obtains transcendental knowledge or devotional service. Right? So Krishna is giving so he essentially is talking about Devi Varnashram, and in this case he combines Karma and Gyan Varnashram. Okay. Now, while this verse refers to direct bhakti to him, Krishna also understands that very few people can take to it. So with this in mind, from the next verse, Krishna again switches back to the general flow, which is that of Karamkand. Okay, let's do the next verse. 3:10. Sahayagya prajaha shrestva puravacha prajapatihe anena prasavishyatvam eshavostveshta kamaduk In the beginning of creation, the Lord of all creatures sent forth generations of men and demigods, along with sacrifices for Vishnu, and blessed them by saying, "Be thou happy by this yajna, sacrifice, because its performance will bestow upon you everything desirable for living happily and achieving liberation." So this verse essentially is an elaboration on Karma Kand, right? So Krishna talks about it from a more holistic perspective. He says that when the universe is created, in the beginning of creation, when the material world comes into creation, then the Lord Vishnu, he injects the universe with the jivas. Some of them are jivas, regular jivas, some of them are devas, and he also gives them yajnas. What does it mean that he gives them yajnas? It means that he sends along with them the Vedas, and in the Vedas are the yajnas. Now, yajna doesn't mean fire sacrifice. Fire sacrifice is one kind of yajna. Like I had explained this earlier, yajna essentially means performing your prescribed duty. Right? So what the verse is saying is that when this material world is created, then the jivas comes, the devas come, and the prescribed duties are given. And along with the injunction that when you perform your prescribed duty, you will achieve everything desirable and ultimately liberation. So this is sakam karma, right? And one may say that Krishna, in the previous chapter, verses 42 to 45, he had condemned sakam karma, right? Yam imam pushpitam vacham pravadyante avapashyata, right? So he had said that men of small knowledge are attached to the flowery words of the Vedas. In the previous verse, Krishna had recommended Arjuna to work simply for the satisfaction of Lord Vishnu. Now he's saying something else, right? But the understanding is that not everybody can take to bhakti, not everybody can reach the stage of nishkam karma. So what should they do? So in 7 verses, Krishna will say that such people, rather than acting whimsically, which is vikarma, or acting from a platform of false renunciation, which is falgu vairagya, they should be engaged in the stage of sakam karma, or performance of your prescribed duties. Okay, verse 311. Devan bhavayatanena te deva bhavayantu vaha parasparam bhavayantaha shreha param avapsyatha. The demigods, being pleased by sacrifices, will also please you, and thus, by cooperation between men and demigods, prosperity will reign for all. So this verse essentially explains how, by the performance of yajna, one is able to fulfill their material desires. So, as we had noted in the past, that the devas are empowered representatives of the Lord who are like the administrators of the universe. And they are pleased by the performance of yajna. So, by the performance of one's prescribed duties, one pleases the demigods, and in return, the demigods fulfill the desires of the performer of the yajnas. So, Prabhupada says that yajnas has many side effects, ultimately leading to liberation from material bondage. Right? He quotes the Chandogya Upanishad 7.26.2, that by the performance of yajnas, eatables become sanctified. By eating sanctified food, one's existence is purified. By the purification of existence, the finer tissues and the memory become sanctified. And when memory is sanctified, one can think of the path of liberation. Right? So this is a more practical, physical aspect of the purificatory effect of the yagyas. Now, Srila Prabhupada also takes this opportunity to explain about the position of the devas vis-a-vis Lord Vishnu. Prabhupada said the demigods are empowered administrators of material affairs. The supply of air, light, water. So this is Vayu, Surya and Varuna. They are all needed for maintaining the one's material existence, and these are performed by the entrusted demigods. Right? And then Prabhupada also says that it is stated in the Bhagavad-gita that Krishna himself is the ultimate beneficiary of all kinds of yagyas. Bhoktaram yaga tapasama. Therefore, ultimate satisfaction of the yagyapati is the chief purpose of all the yagyas. Okay, next verse. Okay, verse 12. Ishtan bhoganivo deva dasyante yagya bhavitaha te datana pradayebhyo yobhong testena eva saha. In charge of the various necessities of life, the demigods, being satisfied by the performance of yagya, sacrifice, will supply all the necessities to you. But he who enjoys such gifts without offering them to the demigods in return is certainly a thief. So this verse contrasts the position of one who is performing prescribed activities. That was also spoken in the previous verse, 3:11, and whimsical activities. Right? So he who enjoys without offering them to the demigods is a thief. So this is the position of one who enjoys all that nature has to offer. So ultimately the offerings of the natures are coming from the demigods. So one of the questions people ask is that Bhagavad-gita talks about this cycle of yagya, but practically speaking in the current day and time, nobody is following it. And nothing is happening. So does it mean that that does not apply anymore? No, it applies. The cause and effect is there, and we see it also. So it is said that there is individual karma, and there is also collective karma. So Prabhupada would say that things like hurricanes and floods and famines, they are all the result of collective vikarma. So as more and more people fall in this category of enjoying without acknowledging the proprietorship, then not only will they suffer individually, they will also suffer collectively. So in the purport, Prabhupada says that ultimately all yagyas are meant for gradual promotion to the transcendental position. And so while the yagyas are meant, at least in this context, for sakam, to enjoy material benefits, but there is also built into this the subscription to the instructions of the Vedas. And as the persons surrender to the Vedas, they get purified and elevated. So Prabhupada says for ordinary men, at least 5 yagyas known as the Panch Mahayagya are necessary. So the Panch Mahayagya are the 5 sacred duties that are recommended to be performed as a way of life to live in harmony with the world. So what are the Panch Mahayagyas? What is the Brahma Yagya? So the Brahma Yagya is worship of the scriptures and worship of the rishis. So worship of the scriptures, of course, is study of the scripture. Sometimes people take worship literally, that they'll put the scripture and they will offer arti to it and just keep it wrapped up, right? But that is not the real worship of the scriptures. One worships the scriptures by one's intelligence. Then the second is Deva Yajna. So Deva Yajna is worship of the Lord in any form, as in the original form as Vishnu or in the form of the Devas, and the worship is done by puja, by jap, temple worship. Pitra Yajna is worship of the parents and forefathers, or respecting and taking care of them if they're alive. Manushya Yajna is the notion of service to humanity. And Bhuta Yajna is service to all living beings, like animals, trees, etc. So these are the Pancha Maha Yajnas that are recommended. And one who does not follow them, Krishna says, is certainly a thief. Okay, so move on to the next verse. Okay, verse 13. Yajna shesthashanaha santo mucchante sarva kilbashahe bhunjate te tvagam papa ye pachante atma karanat. The devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sins because they eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So in the previous set of verses, Krishna was explaining the notion of sense gratification as per scriptural injunctions. So activities performed according to the Vedic injunctions are called yajna. Right? So yajna is composed of two words, yaj and ya. So yaj means worshipping. Yajante hi sumedesha. So yaj means worshipping and ya means whom. So yajna means worshipping the Supreme Lord or rendering service to the Supreme Lord. Right? So as I noted earlier, sometimes yajna or generally yajna is confused as homa or fire sacrifice. However, that is only one form of yajna. Any service rendered to the Lord is yajna. So later on in the 4th chapter from 25 to 29, Krishna will talk about various kinds of yajnas. And as we know, the most famous yajna in this age of Kali is Sankirtan Yajna, or the worship of the Lord by chanting His name. Another form of yajna is eating. And Krishna uses this example because it is most pervasive and everyone can relate to it since everyone has to eat. So he is saying that the proper way to eat is to first offer the eatables to the Lord. The improper way to eat is to simply eat to satisfy the senses. Now in both the cases, the person is enjoying the food. But in the former case, there is acknowledgement that the food is given by the mercy of the Lord and the Devas. Right? And offering food also means that the food is cooked according to the Vedic injunctions. So the Vedas, they recommend and prohibit food, certain kinds of food, certain combinations of foods also. The most obvious is that the Vedas subscribe to the notion of mahimsa, that no violence, which basically means do not kill other living entities. Now, in eating, there is, or rather for survival, there is always violence. Right? In Narad Muni and Srimad Bhagavatam, he says this verse to Yudhishthir, Ahashtani sahashtanam apadani chatushpadam phalguni tatra mahatama jiva jivasya jivanam. So the last line is interesting. Jiva jivasya jivanam. That one living entity is food for another living entity. So those who are devoid of hands are prey for those who have hands. Those who are devoid of legs are prey for those who are four-legged. The weak are the subsistence for the strong. And the general rule is that one living being is food for another. Right? So even vegetarians incur sil by eating plants, which we know also possess life. Right? So in the Vishnu Smriti, noted that Kandani Peshani Chulli Udakumbi cha Marjani Panchashuna Grahastasya Tabi Swargam Navindati. So, Panchashuna Grahastasya, that a householder in preparing food will inevitably commit 5 kinds of sins. So these are the death to other living entities caused by the mortar. So the mortar is used essentially for flattening things. Then grinding stone, the stove in which there is fire, the broom, and the water pot. Right. So what it means is that even if you're cooking vegetables, you have to. You may have to grind it, you may have to use the mortar to make paste out of it, you will have to cook it, you will have to clean, and you have to use water which has living entities. So one way or the other, there is violence. But then the recommendation is that when such food is offered in yajna, and such food is offered to the Lord, it is actually known as Vaishvadeva Yajna. And it is freed of all the sins that are caused by these 5 types of violence. So this addresses the often repeated objection to vegetarianism. People say that when vegetarians say to those who eat meat that you're killing, then many of them will say the plants have life, you are also causing death to them. And essentially there are there is 2 understandings to them, or maybe 3 if you look at it from a holistic perspective. One is that plants have a much lower level of conscience. So they don't feel pain, they don't feel hurt to the same level. Now, there have been experiments that they say that plants do feel some level of pain, but it is much, much lower. So the consciousness is lower, the sentience is lower, so their ability to experience pain and fear, etc., is much lower than that of the animals. The second is that the Vedas acknowledged that Jiva Jivasya Jivanam, that for one living entity to survive, it needs to kill another living entity. So with this, the Vedas have prescribed food. So just like a lion does not incur any sin in killing a deer, because that is the prescribed food for it, the prescribed food for humans is vegetarian food. And so because one is doing as per the Vedic injunctions, then automatically one is protected from the sinful activities or sinful reactions. And the last and the most powerful argument is that before eating, this is offered to the Lord. So when it is offered to the Lord, then by the performance of the Vaishvadeva Yajna, all the sins are taken away. In fact, not only are the sins taken away, the food is now imbued by the mercy of the Lord. Right? That's why when we offer to the deities, they are called bhoga. But when after the offering we take the plate away, it's known as prasadam. So the literal meaning of prasad is mercy. So because the Lord has kindly taken the bhoga, it now is imbued with His mercy. Okay, moving on to the next verse. Verse 14. Annad bhavanti bhutani parjanyatanna sambhavaha yagyad bhavati parjanyo yagyaha karma sambhudavaha. All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice. And yajna is born of prescribed duties. So here Krishna is, so he's still using the example of food to clearly explain how does yajna fit into one's existence. Right? So in the last verse, yajna was specifically the version of yajna which is offering of the food was mentioned. So as we had noticed, or as we had noted, that there are many kinds of yajna. Sankirtan yajna, dravya yajna, buddhi yajna. So there are many kinds of yajna, but specifically the yajna that was noticed was Vaishvadeva yajna, which is offering of food as per scriptural recommendations. Krishna now extends that example to give us a more holistic understanding of what is going on. So let's follow the chain of cause and effect that Krishna notes in this verse. First, the jivas perform the prescribed duties as per the Vedas, that is karma. By the performance of these prescribed duties, which are also called yajnas, there is rain. By the rain comes food, parjanyat. Right? Then the food is the cause of vitality. So when food is taken, it transforms into blood and semen, and it nourishes the body. And empowered by this nourishment, or enthused by this vitality, the people perform karma. Yes, so now they are back to the first point, that they perform karma, and through the karma they perform yajna, rain. From rain comes grains, from grain comes vitality, from vitality comes karma. So this is the cycle where the beginning and the end is the same. So once again, from karma is the cause of yajna. Yajna is the cause of rain. Rain is the cause of food. Food is the cause of vitality, and vitality is the cause of karma. Therefore, one should perform the yajna because it causes the cyclic movement in the universe, right? And as long as the cyclicity is maintained, there is order in the universe. Okay, moving on to the next verse. Okay, verse 15. Karma brahmodbhavam vidhi brahmakshara sambudbhavam tasmat sarvagatam brahma nityam yagya pratheshtitam. Regulated activities are prescribed in the Vedas, and the Vedas are directly manifested from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Consequently, the all-pervading transcendence is eternally situated in acts of sacrifice. So this is a very interesting verse because it now connects the performance of prescribed duties to the Lord. And so, as I noted, that the majority of the Vedas talk about Sakam Karma, Karma Kand. And Karma Kand is almost entirely worship of the demigods. So the notion is that if Krishna wants us to worship him, why does the most of the Vedas talk about demigod worship? So one reason, of course, is that the demigods are very quick in giving material favors, and because most of the people are desiring material favors, so the Vedas give that option. Now here, the second and the more important reason also comes that even when they are performing Sakam Karma, even when they are doing material activities, as long as it is being done according to the injunctions of the scriptures, they will make spiritual advancements. Right? So let me show you this cycle over here. So we had established this cycle in the previous verse. If you start from the jivas, so the jivas, according to the Vedas, get the prescribed duties and they perform yajnas. From the yajna comes rain, from the rain comes food, and the food vitalizes the jivas, and that's the cycle. Now, in this verse, Krishna injects himself. He said the Vedas are actually coming from me. So when the Jivas, they follow the Vedas, in effect, they are following the injunctions of the Lord. Right? Now then one may say, then why does Krishna criticize? Right? With verses like Yam Imam Pushpitam Vacham, and later on he'll criticize, because they are suboptimal. So Krishna gives this for those who are not able to take to the higher forms. But Krishna does not leave anybody behind. Right? So for those who are too materially engrossed, Krishna says, if you follow the Vedas, then not only will you get material prosperity, material satisfaction, but the fact that you are indirectly following my instructions, you will also make spiritual advancements. Okay, so Prabhupada makes this point that even those who have not followed the Vedic injunctions may adopt the principles of Krishna consciousness, and that will take the place of performance of Vedic yajnas. So Prabhupada makes the point that in the current day and age, the following of the Vedic injunctions is not possible because the Vedas are mostly absent and the society also is not conducive. So this channel of purification is not available. So Krishna offers another channel of purification, which is bhakti, which also happens to be more potent. So Prabhupada is encouraging us to take to that path. Okay, so let's go to the next verse. Okay, verse 16. Evam pravartitam chakram nanu vartayati haya agayurindriya ramo mogam partha sajivati. My dear Arjun, one who does not follow in human life the cycle of sacrifice that's established by the Vedas certainly leads a life full of sin. Living only for the satisfaction of the senses, such a person lives in vain. Right? So Krishna is now talking about the sin of not performing yajna or not following the injunctions of the Veda. Right? So the previous verse was glorifying those that followed, saying that they not only will they enjoy material gains, but because they are also indirectly following the instructions of Krishna, they also make advancements. But what about those who do not? It says they sink to hell. So it says that their life is aghayu, which is sinful, and mogham. Mogham means they live the life in vain. Why in vain? Because the purpose of life is to make advancements. But they deprive themselves of that. So this verse also negates Arjun's proposal of going to the forest and live over there. Because even if he lives in the forest, he will need food to subsist. And if he takes the food without the performance of his prescribed duty, which for him is to fight on religious principles, he will incur sins. So his proposal that while if I fight in the battle, I have sins, so in order to avoid the sins, I will go to the forest and live there, is defeated by this verse. So this is the last verse in the Karma Kanda section of the chapter, where Krishna has explained the importance of performing prescribed duties, even if it is for personal enjoyment. Right? And in the next set of verses, Krishna will talk about who can and who cannot perform prescribed duties. So we'll end the discussion here and resume from verse 17 next time. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.